Hello and welcome to another episode of Fixed Slices and Deep Cuts. On this evening's episode, and since this is the month of October, I'm going to try certainly some darker themes for this month. So something either dark or horrific or, in the spirit of Halloween and all those things. So to kick off the month, I'm actually going to do an episode on the dark ambient artist. Is it NOCTILUCANT? I believe is how he pronounces it. I know that my Amazon devices prefer NOCTILUCANT, but either way, I'm talking about a dark ambient composer from Wisconsin, Joseph Mlodik, and he's been releasing music now for at least 5 years, and I think the origins of this go back to about 2015 or so. So I'm just excited to do something related to dark ambient. I think way back at the beginning of this channel, I kind of went into a show on cryo chamber releases. So that's the label run by Simon Heath. But that was pretty much my knowledge of this dark and deep ambient. Was pretty much anything that was getting released through his label. And of course, there is a ton of this kind of music out there elsewhere. I've reached out to Joe in the past, either to talk about something or he's commented on previous episodes I've done. But I just appreciate the fact that I'm aware of his music now, and that there are other forms of dark ambient that are of high quality that aren't just on the cryo chamber label. And I'm just glad to be doing an episode on another artist of ambient music, because almost everything I do is either prog or extreme forms of metal. So, but let's just get to it. Not necessarily going to rank any albums here, because there are so many releases. Some of them aren't physical copies, and everything is on Bandcamp. So if you go to NOCTILUCANT, in fact, I'll show you how it's spelled here. But here's his the re-release of one of his early albums, Oblivion to You All. And so there's NOCTILUCANT. There's the spelling. You can go on Bandcamp. You can go on Amazon Music. All of his stuff is pretty much on there as well. But that and his first official full-length, Back to the Mud, cover a storyline. And I'm about to open this. It was sealed with wax, and I didn't want to open the seal, so I've been listening to these albums, digitally. But here we go. I can't believe I'm about to break the wax seal here. In fact, I don't know if I can. Oh, there it goes. There it goes. So this is Back to the Mud. This was the first in a series of full-length stories. So Back to the Mud is basically just something has happened in the world, and the world it's apocalyptic, and the world is about to come to an end. Something terrible has happened, and that storyline continues on to Oblivion to You All. So this is the sequel, basically, or the continuation of Back to the Mud. This is the special re-release. I believe the black disc was the one that has the proper album, and then this is all the bonus material and autographs. So that is nice. And this is all do-it-yourself. I don't know how Joe puts these together himself, but that's pretty cool. I've had CDs printed in the past, and you can do runs of like 10 or 20, or I think I did 25, and things like that. But when I say I did it myself, I actually still did everything online and had somebody else manufacture them. But he may be doing these literally himself. So the packaging is pretty cool. So Back to the Mud is just very general, and it talks about the end. The world is coming to an end. Something has happened, and and people are dying, and the world is starting to freeze over, and there are other things that happen, and it's just and you get that there is a little bit of spoken word that gives you kind of steers you. It's like these markers in the storyline. You usually get one right up somewhere in the early part of the album, and it kind of sets the tone. The first one, it's a little more vague, but as it goes along, there's literally an audio clip, probably in the middle of Back to the Mud, towards the end, where it sounds like you kind of get an idea that something terrible is happening to people while all this is going on, and you certainly figure that out on Oblivion to you all. And I know you probably can't see the dark picture there, but if you look closely, and this is my favorite artwork, by the way, of any of the NOCTILUCANT releases, but there's a spoken word at the beginning of this that pretty much lets you know that, parts of the world are starting to freeze over. The power went out. Some chemicals, I think, spilled into the ground, into the water supply. People are, and I quote, transmutating. So I think a lot of human beings are dying, and a lot of people are turning into something else, monstrous form, and they're probably out, killing everything in their path. So that is the continuation of Back to the Mud. By the way, of all the stuff I've heard, this one is ominous, obviously, and dark, and it's kind of sad, and there's some melody to it at times, kind of somber. Although the end of this is not somber at all. It's pretty much just bleak and dark and apocalyptic. This one is pretty much just evil the whole way through. I mean, it's... of all the stuff I've heard, this is probably the most evil, just straight up evil album. So whereas this one was a little somber in the beginning and then got pretty dark and apocalyptic, this one's just creepy, evil all the way through. It sounds like terrible things are just happening all over the place on this one, and that album cover is great. What were the other ones? So as far as I can tell, this storyline continues with an album called Bleak and Drained of Color. Try to put these pictures up. Which I think continues someone else's experience during this whole time. Maybe in another part of the world, or maybe further down in the timeline. I'm not sure how much time has passed between when everything initially happened and when this occurs. It doesn't seem like a lot of time has passed. Maybe a year or two. Not sure, but enough time has passed for everyone to kind of get an idea of like, okay, this is the way the world unfortunately is going to be. But these other ones are just elsewhere elsewhere in the world, Bleak and Drained of Color, and then also Amongst the Snow and the Shadows is another continuation of the storyline, another perspective from someone else, maybe further on into the future. So as far as I can tell, there are 4 albums that continue the storyline. And those are good too, but I think these are the darkest, and this is the most evil, but I don't know which one I prefer more. I mean, I think they're both equally excellent. They're both very dark. This one, if you like the evil, you get it here, the creepy and the evil, and if you like the somber and pretty dark and ominous, this one suits that as well. Let's see. Oh, and this storyline kind of reminds me of The Walking Dead, the show. It's post-apocalyptic. People are dying left and right. Humans have transformed into something monstrous and terrible. The difference, though, here is, I think, in The Walking Dead, and I did watch the show early on. I think at some point it just became more of a soap opera, but I watched the show early on, thought it was great. The difference there is they're always like in somewhere, in Georgia, right, outside of Atlanta, where it's hot and 100 degrees all the time. Whereas in this, it sounds like there's a permafrost. There's, the world is kind of slowly freezing over, or at least freezing over in a lot of spots where it shouldn't. So that's kind of a different sort of twist. Plus, the thing that's always great about ambient music is, they give you enough spoken word and enough creepy audio stuff to kind of, as markers on these albums, to kind of guide you. But for the most part, you're left to your imagination, which is what I prefer. I like it when they give you kind of an idea of the world you're in, but they don't spell it out for you. And that's perfect. Leave it, open to interpretation, open to your overactive imagination. And there was another one, V or 5 Chronicling the Apocalypse. I think that's just like a collection of either leftovers or a collage of existing pieces from the earlier albums of this storyline. And I tried to make I did make a playlist for this, but I can't for some reason get the playlist to come up when I give voice commands to my Amazon device. So because of that, just for my background music, I have a 30-minute piece he did early on called "Neath the Cerulean Abyss," which I think is my favorite thing to listen to by him. It's probably not dark ambient; it's probably more deep ambient, or at least like meditative. And I do like to listen to that. This is the description he had was that something falls from the sky, lands at the top of the ocean, and it just has its journey all the way to the darkest, horrific spots, deep within the ocean. So probably the Mariana Trench or something like that. But anyway, this is probably my favorite piece. It doesn't really sound too terribly like the darker storyline albums. It's a little bit different, maybe closer to being a little more meditative. He also does Joe does another project called House of the Maker, which I think is still dark ambient, but it's maybe a little less dark and more meditative, maybe closer to that kind of deep ambient thing. I did not listen to, he's got one album under a moniker called Sonic Oscillations, where it mixes multiple genres of ambient, so that should be interesting. And then more recently is it Gavella Glan, Dungeon Synth. Not familiar with Dungeon Synth, but it sounds interesting. Joe, or Noctilukant, however it's pronounced, he's got his own podcast and his own station on YouTube, so you can certainly look him up on there. And I think it's a small world. I actually think that I knew who he was about 2 or 3 years ago, when I was trying to find more out about this Cryo Chamber label that I had just discovered, and it was just like, I went from not knowing about it one day to like a month later and having like a dozen CDs of music from that label. And so I was finding anything I could on YouTube or anywhere, and he had a video where he was kind of going through, Sabled Sun, City's Last Broadcast, artists like that. So then that's how I knew he was on the radar, and when he reached out a few months ago on one of my other episodes, I was like, wow, what a small world. I know who that is. But he's got his own podcast where he covers lots of different music. I think it's mostly ambient, but I don't think it's strictly ambient. I think there's some black metal and things like that on the station. But one video I did see from him, he kind of shows how he goes about making his music, and I thought it was interesting that he bought, a fairly inexpensive, was it Juno DI synthesizer, and that's what he uses as the basis for a lot of his music. And of course, I think all ambient artists use field recordings or other sort of tribal instruments, things like that. But yeah, just good stuff, and I'm glad to review and shed a little bit of light on his work as well. So I think that covers it. Oh, one other album, again, cool do-it-yourself stuff, and he does many collaborations. This is just one. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Paginae Nigris. It's a split with someone named Deep Dark, and I want to say that Deep Dark is from another country here. Why do I think he might be Russian? But at any rate, it's cool stuff too. It's again, everything is dark, but I wouldn't say this is evil or dark. This is certainly ethereal, maybe a little bit spacey ethereal, but this is good too. So this is Deep Dark and Noctilukant with Paginae Nigris. Most of his physical products are sold out, but there are a few things you can still buy off the Bandcamp site. But you can hear anything he's done, you can find it on Bandcamp to listen to, and even on Amazon Music, which I think is pretty cool. And I really dig his whole do-it-yourself approach. As somebody that's in the same realm of like, you're just ecstatic if you could sell, 100 units of an album. That would make my day. So it's definitely on do-it-yourself level. Although I think NOCTILUCANT has a pretty good following. I've seen quite a few. He's got quite a few followers and views on his stuff. So he definitely has a fan base, and he definitely fits in with the whole cryo chamber. If he was on the cryo chamber label, he would be one of the darkest artists that they have. Because I think cryo chamber is dark, but a lot of it is also like deep and meditative, like God Body Disconnect. He's dark, but he's also kind of melodic or whatever you want to call it. But I would put him up there. There was a artist Exemia on the label who was pretty evil and bleak, and some of Oblivion to You All, I'm like, wow, that rivals some of the darkest stuff on there. But so there you go. That's a chance to do a dark ambient review, which I love to do. I think I've only done 3. This would be the 4th one. I'm glad to do this for to promote NOCTILUCANT, to promote Joe's stuff, and also it is the month of October, so I definitely want to continue with these kind of creepier. It's either going to be a creepy theme, or a creepy or a dark thing, or it's just going to be a fun Halloween type thing. It's going to be one of those two. But so there you go. That is discussing the discography of dark ambient artist NOCTILUCANT. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.